The shoes by the front door weren't hers. That's how I knew something had shifted. That was the moment the breath caught in my throat. Not when she rolled her eyes and left for the party, not when she said, "You're being dramatic," and certainly not when she slammed the door while adjusting her makeup. No, it was the sneakers I saw when I came back, 3 days later. Size 11. Mud on the soles. Laced like someone had left in a hurry. And I don't own sneakers like that. Let me rewind, but only a little. Because most of the story isn't about before. It's about what came after I asked one simple thing. "Please don't go to that party." She laughed. Not in a mean way. Worse, in that dismissive, almost bored kind of laugh. "You've got to be kidding," she said, not looking up from her phone. I wasn't. I was never kidding when it came to her. I just had a way of sounding pathetic when I tried to be serious. That's always been my curse. Every time I speak from my chest, it comes out of my nose instead. She said she had to go. Said her coworkers expected her. Said it was just networking, but I'd seen the messages pop up before, flashes of a name she swore was just a group chat. Funny how she always tilted her screen away when those came in. So I told her no. Or rather, I asked. Quietly. Hesitantly. The way I always do. Like I'm not sure I'm allowed to have needs. She left anyway. At 7:13 p.m. I remember the time because I was standing at the window, watching her call the Uber. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I walked to the garage, sat in my old car, and turned the key. I had no idea where I was going, but I drove until the gas light blinked, then drove some more. No phone, no wallet, no charger. Just the weight in my chest, the hum of tires on cold asphalt, and the ghost of her perfume still clinging to the collar of my hoodie. I disappeared for 3 days. No one noticed. Not her. Not her mother. Not my brother, who borrows money but never returns calls. Just me, the road, and a growing dread I couldn't name. Until I came back. Quietly. Unexpectedly. And those shoes were there. Inside, the place smelled like air freshener sprayed over panic. There was a mug in the sink. A second toothbrush on the counter, not even hidden. One of our towels, stained with something red, tossed carelessly on the floor like it didn't belong to a life once shared. And that's when I heard the voicemail. I didn't check my own phone. I didn't have it. But the landline, the one no one uses except for spam and forgotten relatives, blinked once. I pressed play, and her voice cracked as she said my name. But it was what came next that made my knees go weak. The message started out shaky. At first, I didn't even recognize her voice. She sounded thinner somehow, like someone had wrung out all the confidence and left only the husk. "Hey," she whispered, then paused, breathing in like she was alone in a place she didn't want to be. I don't know where you are. I came home, and you weren't here. I figured you were just being moody again, but now it's been 2 days, and your phone's dead. Or off. Or smashed. I don't know." Another long pause. A clink of glass in the background, like maybe she was pacing with a wine glass in her hand. That's what she always did when she needed to think. Or more accurately, when she needed to not think. Look, if this is some kind of guilt trip, it's not funny. You can't just vanish because you didn't get your way. Click. The message ended abruptly. But I stood there, hand hovering over the machine like it might say more if I waited long enough. It didn't. She thought I disappeared to punish her? As if I was some sulking teenager trying to teach her a lesson for going to a party? I wasn't trying to teach her anything. I was trying to disappear because, for once, I needed the silence more than I needed her to understand me. It was never about control. It was about not knowing how to breathe in the same room with someone who looked at me like a chair that squeaked too much. The irony was, in those 3 days, I hadn't expected a single message. And yet hearing that voicemail, I realized she hadn't called because she missed me. She called because she couldn't explain me. Because people were probably asking where I was. And she didn't want to look like the woman whose husband had walked out without a word. Image, not emotion. That was always her strength. I went upstairs, and the first thing I noticed was the bed. Unmade. Which wasn't odd in itself, except the pillows were shifted in a way that didn't make sense, as if someone had laid on my side. Her sleep habits had always been tidy. She curled in a ball on the right, never moved. But now the comforter was tugged across both ends, and one of my drawers was ajar. Empty. Like someone had needed a shirt. Or worn one. I checked the bathroom next. My razor was wet. My cologne had been moved. She hadn't called the police. She hadn't told her family. She hadn't even posted anything online asking where I was. But she'd brought someone here. That part hit harder than I expected. Not because I was surprised, but because I dared to hope. Hope that maybe 3 days would have meant something. That maybe she would have sat in the living room staring at the wall, whispering my name into her knees, regretting how she'd laughed at my one small request. Instead, she replaced me with someone who wore size 11 sneakers and drank water from my mug. I sat on the edge of the bed, still dirty from the road, shoes leaving faint smudges on the carpet. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the floor for what felt like hours. And then, I stood up and walked to the closet. That's when I saw something I never expected. A small black bag, half-zipped, stuffed behind her row of dresses like she'd tried to hide it but didn't really care if I found it. Inside were a folded t-shirt, mine, a pair of men's boxers that weren't, and a receipt for a hotel 30 minutes from our house. Date: the night of the party. The same night she told me I was being ridiculous. I slumped back into the hallway, that bag in my lap, and just sat there with it, numb. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt the most. It was how convenient it all seemed. Like I'd made it easy for her. Like my absence gave her a guilt-free hall pass, and she punched it with both hands. But she hadn't counted on me coming back early. And she definitely hadn't expected what I was about to do next. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I lay on the floor of our bedroom with the ceiling fan circling like a clock with no numbers, its blades cutting through the quiet like it was mocking me for trying to find rest here. That cheap hotel receipt sat on the nightstand, next to the toothbrush she never offered to replace after mine mysteriously disappeared last month. I noticed the smallest things now, like how 2 wine glasses were drying on the rack when we only ever used mugs, or how there were 2 receipts in the bag, not one. One dated the night of the party, the other 2 days later. While I was driving through fog and gas station towns, she had gone back. Twice. By 6 a.m., I knew I couldn't pretend. I couldn't act like I had just gone on a dramatic solo camping trip to clear my head. If she wanted me gone so badly that she could replace me within hours of walking out the door, fine, I'd give her what she wanted. But I wasn't going to vanish quietly this time. I drove downtown. Not to the hotel. Not yet. First, I needed clarity. So I stopped at my friend Dalton's apartment. Now, calling Dalton a friend might be a stretch. We hadn't talked in almost a year, after a falling out over something dumb involving his ex and a poker night gone wrong. But he was the only person who ever told me to grow a spine, and wasn't afraid to say it to my face. He opened the door still rubbing sleep out of his eyes, hair pointing in 6 different directions, and looked at me like he thought I was selling vacuum cleaners. "You look like a drowned ghost," he muttered. "What happened?" I walked in. Told him everything. Well, most of it. I left out the part where I'd spent 3 nights sitting in silence and wondering if she'd even flinched. I left out the ache in my ribs that didn't go away after hearing that voicemail. But I showed him the hotel receipt, the bag, and the voicemail I'd recorded from the landline. He didn't say much. Just sat there with his coffee and listened. When I finished, he leaned back and asked, "You sure you want to know everything? Because once you do, you can't unknow it." I nodded, because that was the problem. I already knew. I just needed confirmation so I'd stop feeling insane. Dalton made 2 phone calls. I didn't ask who they were to. Within an hour, he had the name of the guest who checked into that room. And it wasn't Dina. It was a man named Craig Hemsworth, one of her coworkers. Not the one she talked about all the time. Not Chase, the flirty one from marketing. Craig was the married one from HR. The one who gave off harmless dad energy and brought donuts to meetings. Suddenly, I saw the whole thing differently. This wasn't about lust or heat of the moment chemistry. This wasn't about an irresistible attraction. This was planned, hidden, strategic. Dina didn't just cheat. She partnered in betrayal with someone who had just as much to lose. That made it colder. That made it worse. I left Dalton's place without saying much. My phone buzzed on the way home. Voicemail from Dina. Again. This time her voice was higher, clipped. "Ira, if you're back, you better answer me. I have no idea what you're doing, but you're freaking me out. You can't just walk in, take stuff, and leave again. That's not okay. We need to talk. I'm serious." Take stuff? That's when I realized the hotel bag was gone. I floored the gas back to the house. Threw the door open. She was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, holding that black bag in both hands like she'd just fished it out of a crime scene. She looked up at me, startled, pale, and for once, not composed. "You weren't supposed to find this," she said. I didn't answer. I stared at her, not with rage, not with heartbreak. Just a raw kind of clarity. She looked at me like she didn't know who I was anymore. And maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I cut her off. No, I said quietly. I'm not doing this here. Not now. I walked past her, up the stairs, into the guest room. Locked the door. I needed to think. Because what I was about to do next would change everything. I stayed in that locked room for hours. No lights. Just the gray of the early afternoon bleeding in through the half-closed blinds, casting long slats across the carpet like prison bars. I didn't move, barely breathed. I didn't even sit. I just stood by the window, listening. Listening for her footsteps. For her voice. For anything. But the house was dead quiet, like it had agreed to hold its breath with me. For the first time in our marriage, silence was no longer a space between arguments, it was a weapon, and I was the one holding it. She knocked 3 times around sunset. Not hard. Just enough to make sure I knew she was still out there. Ira, she said, voice soft. We need to talk. Please. You're scaring me. That was rich. I was scaring her? She said she was sorry. She said it twice, but it didn't land right. You can always tell when someone's sorry they got caught, not sorry they did it. I didn't answer. I let the silence do the talking again. She stood there for a few more seconds, then her footsteps faded down the hall. When it was completely dark, I finally moved. I flicked on the lamp and sat at the desk in the corner. I opened my laptop. For the first time since I got back, I wanted answers not just for myself, but on record. I wasn't going to confront her with shaky accusations and wild theories. I needed facts. Proof. A timeline that couldn't be denied. So I logged into the phone bill account. We shared it. She never changed the password. I pulled up the logs from the night of the party. There they were, 3 long calls to a number I didn't recognize, all made between 9 p.m. and midnight. Then 2 more the next day. Then another the night after, just before her second hotel visit. I copied the number, ran a quick reverse lookup. It came back registered to Craig's wife, not Craig himself. And that's when it hit me like a gut punch. They weren't hiding from me. They were hiding from her. Craig had given Dina his wife's phone, or maybe she used it while he was running errands, or playing the loyal husband at a PTA meeting. Either way, it made everything worse. It made it deliberate, coordinated, sick. I should have confronted her right then and there. Should have thrown open the door, marched downstairs, and laid everything out. But something in me said, not yet. I needed to see it in her eyes. The guilt, the fear, the scramble. So I waited one more night. In the morning, I went downstairs. She was at the table, sipping coffee like she hadn't just detonated our life with a velvet dress and a hotel receipt. She looked up at me and smiled, tentative. Hey, she said. I didn't answer. I sat down across from her and slid the folded printout of the call log onto the table. Her eyes darted to it, then up to me. What's this? She asked. You tell me. She unfolded it with hands she tried to keep steady. She read for maybe 10 seconds before her lips parted slightly, like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Then she laughed, that same nervous, high-pitched laugh she gave when she got pulled over once and tried to charm the cop. Ira, this isn't what you think. I leaned forward. Then explain it. Because if you can make 2 nights at a hotel, 5 phone calls to another man's wife, and a black bag of his clothes all add up to nothing, I'll be impressed. Her smile broke. Just like that. Like she realized the game was up. She pushed the paper away like it burned her. Okay, she said, voice suddenly sharper. Yes. Fine. I messed up. But I was lonely, Ira. You shut down on me months ago. You sit in your hoodie and headphones and expect me to pretend this is a marriage? I made a mistake, but you disappeared. You left. What kind of man does that? I stared at her. I wanted to yell. I wanted to laugh. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned in just a little and said, the kind of man who finally figured out that asking you to stay home wasn't controlling. It was begging you to stay committed. And you didn't just leave, you invited someone else in before I even turned off the driveway. She didn't respond. She just blinked, not crying, not panicking, just cold. Like her brain was already spinning through options, damage control, angles. That was always her strength, playing calm while the house was burning down. I want you to pack a bag, I said. Her eyes finally widened. What? I'm not leaving. Not this time. This is my house too. You wanted freedom so badly. Go find it somewhere else. But you don't get to keep your name on the mailbox while you lie in someone else's bed. For the first time in years, she had no script to pull from. And I had no tears left to give her. She didn't pack. Not at first. She just stared at me like I'd spoken a different language, like she couldn't comprehend that I was the one drawing the line now. For a moment, I saw a flicker of something behind her eyes. Panic? Anger? Maybe even regret? But it vanished as quickly as it surfaced. She stood, crossed her arms, and said, "You don't get to make ultimatums." I laughed under my breath, not because it was funny, but because I'd heard that line so many times, in so many different forms, I could have printed it on a t-shirt. Every time I tried to express a need or fear, it was controlling. Every time I voiced discomfort, it was overreacting. Every time I asked her to choose us over something else, I became the villain in her story. I didn't respond. I just walked into the living room, unplugged the router, and took it with me. It was petty, sure, but it was the one thing she truly depended on more than me. By the time I shut the guest room door, she was already following, already demanding to talk. But I didn't open it. I didn't say a word. I wanted her to sit with what she'd done without the noise of rationalization. Later that day, I heard the front door slam. I watched through the window as she stormed out to her car, made a scene of throwing her bag in the back seat, and peeled out of the driveway like she was starring in a movie that nobody asked her to be in. I didn't chase her. I didn't text. I just sat down with my laptop and got to work. By that night, I had an appointment with a divorce attorney. I didn't call her family. I didn't call mine. I knew how that would go. They'd say things like, "Marriage is work, and maybe you should have gone to the party too, or worse, don't throw away 6 years over one mistake." But this wasn't one mistake. This was the slow erosion of trust, layered with gaslighting and sealed with betrayal. It wasn't about infidelity, it was about her making me feel crazy for seeing what I saw. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Craig's wife. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She said she found my name in Craig's messages and figured it out after piecing together a few hotel confirmations and deleted call logs. Apparently, I wasn't the only husband who disappeared that weekend. Craig told her he was on a team-building retreat. She asked me one question. Did they plan this? I paused. I remembered the bag. The second receipt. The way Dina had tried to hide it, but not very well. The arrogance in assuming I'd never find it. Yes, I said finally. They did. There was a beat of silence on her end, then a sigh, long, bitter, exhausted. Thanks, she said. That's all I needed. She hung up. Just like that. No tears. No drama. Just the quiet click of someone who had reached their limit and had nothing left to salvage. Around noon, Dina came back. She looked different. Not tear-streaked or broken. Just deliberate. She walked in with sunglasses still on and keys in hand like she expected to be in control again. You didn't answer my messages, she said. I saw them. I replied. Ira, this is insane. We've built a life here. You can't just throw it away like trash. And you can't just bring other people into our bed like it's a guest room. She flinched. I don't think she expected me to say it so plainly. Her face tightened like she wanted to lash out, to say something cruel, but she stopped herself. Instead, she put her bag down slowly and tried a different tactic. The softer one. Look, she said, stepping closer. I don't want to lose this. I know I screwed up, but I love you. I do. It got messy, and I panicked, and I held up a hand. Don't, I said. Don't say you love me after what you did. Not until you can explain how love includes sleeping with someone else and lying about it while pretending I'm the unreasonable one. She didn't answer. And then, as if the last piece of the script had failed her, she sat down. Not to beg, not to plead, but to wait. I'm not leaving, she said. This is my house too. You can't force me out. For a long time, I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. This woman I had once adored. This woman who used to dance barefoot in the hallway with a glass of red wine and laugh like the world couldn't touch us. And now she sat there like a squatter in her own marriage, clinging to the ruins of what she herself had demolished. Finally, I said, You're right. I can't force you out. Her eyes brightened slightly too early. But I don't have to stay here with you, either. And if you want to see what it looks like when you're the one left in the silence, go ahead. Sit here. Alone. With everything you didn't care enough to protect. I stood up, grabbed my duffel, and walked toward the door. She called my name once sharp, desperate. But I didn't turn back. Because this time, she would be the one wondering where I went. I didn't go far, not physically. But emotionally, I might as well have crossed the country. I drove to the edge of town, pulled into a dusty motel lot with a flickering vacancy sign, and asked for a room with the least amount of human contact possible. The clerk didn't even glance up from her crossword when she handed me the key. Room 12. The kind of room where the air smelled like bleach and regret, where the walls were thin and the bedspread had seen better decades. It was exactly what I needed. I collapsed onto the bed without unpacking. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't scroll through my phone. I just stared at the textured ceiling, tracing invisible patterns with my eyes while my brain tried to process the hollow space where my marriage used to be. You'd think walking away would feel empowering, like a righteous moment of liberation after years of being sidelined in your own relationship. But all I felt was empty, like someone had reached inside and scooped out every last drop of hope I'd been carrying. The worst part? I didn't even know what I was mourning. Was it the betrayal itself? Or the version of her I had invented and clung to for years? The woman who used to tuck a note into my coat pocket when I had client meetings. The woman who used to trace circles on my back with her fingertips until I fell asleep. I wasn't sure when she'd stop doing that. I wasn't sure when I'd stop noticing. I finally checked my phone the next morning. 7 missed calls. 5 voicemails. All from her. The first one started calm. The second was anxious. By the 5th, she was full on sobbing, begging me to come home, saying she was lost without me, telling me I misunderstood everything, that it wasn't what I thought, that it had only happened once. Only once. Like that made it less lethal. Then came the text messages, long, rambling, desperate paragraphs filled with explanations she hadn't offered before. According to her, Craig was manipulative, persistent, and had taken advantage of her vulnerability after one too many drinks. She said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that she regretted the second it ended, that she never meant to hurt me, that she just wanted to feel wanted again. It was strange reading those words. She had all the right phrases, but none of the weight. They read like something she copied from a forum post titled, "How to Apologize After Cheating." And I knew, deep down, that she wasn't sorry it happened. She was sorry she didn't cover her tracks better. I didn't respond. I needed more than words. So I did something I never thought I would. I called Craig's wife. Her name was Gwen. She answered on the second ring with a voice that was clear, composed, and already tired of everything. I introduced myself, and there was a long pause on her end before she said, "Ira, I've been wondering when you'd call again." We talked for nearly an hour. She told me things I hadn't known, that Dina and Craig had been talking for months, that there were messages, not just flirty texts, but confessions, fantasies, even plans. "I'm not surprised she's spinning it," Gwen said with a sigh. "Craig told me she was the one who initiated it. I guess they both got what they needed for a while." She offered to forward me the screenshots. I told her not to. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I already knew enough. I'd spent so long doubting my own instincts that having my reality finally confirmed just felt anticlimactic. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I sat in that stiff-backed motel chair and felt a kind of awful peace settle over me. The kind that comes when the worst has already happened, and the only thing left to do is decide what kind of person you'll be after it. That evening, I drove back home. Not to stay. I needed to speak. Not scream. Not argue. Just close the chapter with my voice, not her voicemail thread. The house was lit when I pulled up. Lights in every room. She was probably hoping I'd see it from the street, some desperate beacon, like I was a ship that just needed the right lighthouse to come back. She opened the door before I even knocked. Her eyes were red, and she was barefoot, like the first night I left. "Ira," she whispered, as if saying my name gently would undo everything. I stepped inside. Didn't sit. Didn't take off my jacket. I just looked around. Same walls, same furniture, same place we used to call home, and I knew it never would be again. "I came to tell you something," I said. "And then I'm leaving." She nodded, hugging her arms. "Okay. I forgive you," I said slowly. "Not because you deserve it, but because I can't carry this anymore. I can't keep dragging around the pieces of a life that you shattered. I forgive you, but I don't want to be with you. I won't be coming back." Her mouth opened slightly, but I didn't let her speak. "You can keep the house. I'll call my lawyer in the morning and have him send the papers. Don't reach out. Don't try to fix this. It's not broken anymore. It's over." I turned to leave. She grabbed my arm. "Ira, wait. Please. I still love you. I know I failed you. But can't we try?" I gently pulled away. "You didn't fail me," I said. "You just stopped choosing me. And now I'm finally choosing myself." Then I walked out. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. I didn't go back to the motel. I just drove. For hours. No destination. No plan. My duffel sat in the passenger seat like a quiet reminder that I just walked away from a life, and yet I didn't feel lost. I felt stripped down. Bare. like someone who had finally peeled away a layer of skin that had been suffocating him for years. At some point, I pulled into a rest stop off the highway. The kind with vending machines that only take exact change and a bathroom that echoes with old country music through a cracked speaker. I sat on a bench outside and watched trucks roll in and out, their drivers vanishing behind curtains or into midnight coffee. I was one of them now, a man in transit. Unattached, uncertain. But then something strange happened. My phone buzzed, a new message. Not from Dina. It was from Gwen. He left today. Took a suitcase and said he needs space. I think he's going to her. I stared at the screen. For a moment, the words didn't even register. But when they did, I felt this bitter mix of vindication and nausea rise in my chest. So she hadn't been done with Craig. Despite everything she said, the tears, the apologies, the empty house with lights on in every room, she was still tangled up in the very thing that destroyed us. I didn't reply to Gwen. What was there to say? Sorry your husband and my ex-wife are soulmates of selfishness? We were both casualties. Her on one battlefield, me on another. The war wasn't between couples, it was between who we were and who they'd become. The next morning, I checked out a small extended stay rental on the edge of town. Furnished, quiet, anonymous. I needed space, and more importantly, time. Not to heal, not yet, but to exist without being constantly reminded of what I had lost. The house was hers now. The memories in its walls were infected. I wanted no part of them. And yet, Dina didn't stop. She emailed. Not daily, hourly. Sometimes she'd send a paragraph of apologies. Sometimes she'd attach old photos, us at the beach, us at our anniversary dinner 2 years ago, her hugging me in the snow outside my parents' cabin. Then came the messages that felt more like traps. I found your jacket, she'd write. I left it in the hall closet in case you want to come by. Or, I haven't told anyone yet. We could still fix this, Ira. If we just talk. Really talk. She didn't understand. Or maybe she did, and just refused to accept it. The worst part wasn't the affair. It was the fact that I had to disappear just to feel visible. That my absence echoed louder than my voice ever did while I was there. It made everything before feel like an audition for a role I was never meant to get. But something else happened that week. I ran into her sister. Mira always liked me more than Dina thought she should. She was the type to notice the smallest things, the way Dina cut me off mid-sentence at dinners, how I always offered to drive but rarely got asked what I wanted to do. She saw the cracks forming long before I did. We crossed paths at a bookstore of all places. I was thumbing through a copy of a book on grief, not that I needed help defining what I was going through, and she tapped me on the shoulder like she hadn't been quietly hoping to bump into me. She looked at me for a long time before saying anything. Then, she told everyone you had a breakdown. I blinked. Excuse me. She said you disappeared because you couldn't handle the pressure of the marriage. That you were spiraling. That you weren't sleeping or eating. And you walked out because you didn't know who you were anymore. It would have been laughable if it hadn't been so calculated. Did she mention Craig? I asked. Mira shook her head. Of course not. But I've known her since we were kids. She only rewrites the story when she knows she's wrong. I nodded slowly, unsure whether to be more hurt by Dina's betrayal or her audacity to still play the victim. Mira slipped me a small folded note before she left. If you ever need someone to tell the truth to your face, I'm around. I pocketed it. Didn't look at it again for 2 days. Then, another message arrived. This one shook me in a way none of her previous ones did. A single photo. Dina, standing outside a hospital room. Her eyes red. Her hair messy. A caption below. Ira, please, call me. I didn't know who else to reach out to. I didn't reply right away. But a cold feeling crept into my stomach. Had something actually happened? Or was this just her next move? I stared at the screen, pulse rising, and realized that no matter how far I ran, she knew exactly how to keep me tethered. But this time, I wasn't walking into her storm. I was walking into the truth, and I wasn't sure what I'd find waiting. I didn't sleep that night. The image of Dina outside that hospital room haunted me in a way that was different from everything before. Not because I wanted to rush to her side, but because a part of me still reacted when I thought someone I once loved might be in pain. That was the hard part about healing. Your body doesn't always get the memo when your heart is moved on. I lay on that unfamiliar couch in my rental apartment, staring at the photo on my phone, wondering if this was another manipulation or if, for once, something real had happened that wasn't about betrayal or blame. By morning, I had made my decision. I drove to the hospital, not because I wanted to fix anything, but because I needed answers not just from her, but for myself. Closure wasn't something I could order off a menu or type into a therapist worksheet. I needed to see it, hear it, feel it. When I walked through the sliding doors, the fluorescent lights hummed above like they were waiting for something. At the front desk, I asked for her by name, and the woman on duty gave me a tired smile and pointed down a hall. Room 214. She's not a patient, just visiting. Visiting. That settled some of the panic in my chest. No emergencies. No accidents. But as I walked toward the room, every step felt heavier than the last. She was sitting in a plastic chair beside an older woman who looked unconscious, her mother, I guessed. Tubes, beeping machines, the faint buzz of a TV on mute. She didn't see me at first, but when I knocked lightly on the open door, she turned slowly. Her face looked 10 years older. Not from makeup, from weight. "Ira," she breathed. She stood up, uncertain, like she didn't know whether to come closer or fall apart. "I got your message," I said. "I figured you weren't faking this one." She managed a weak smile. "No, not this time." Her mother had suffered a stroke, sudden, minor, but enough to rattle Dina back into something human. She told me she hadn't known who else to call, that everyone else had stopped answering, that her own sister Mira had chosen a side. I didn't say much. I listened, and as I stood there, it hit me that I no longer felt anger toward her. Not the way I used to. What I felt was distance. Space. A kind of clarity that let me stand in the same room with her without wanting to scream, or cry, or demand explanations that would never heal anything. "I'm sorry for everything," she said again. "Not just for what I did, for making you feel like you didn't matter." I looked at her, and this time I believed it. Maybe not all of it. Maybe not enough to undo anything, but enough to finally let it go. "I forgive you," I said softly, "and I hope you forgive yourself one day. But our story's over, Dina. Whatever comes next, we have to write it without each other." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. For once, she didn't try to negotiate the ending. I walked out of that hospital feeling lighter than I had in years. 2 weeks later, I signed the divorce papers. There were no fights, no drawn-out disputes. We sold the house. I took what I needed. She kept what she wanted. There were no children to mediate between, just memories, some beautiful, most bittersweet. I started going back to places I'd forgotten about. The quiet bookstore with the broken espresso machine. The park where I used to read before I stopped making time for it. I even reached out to Dalton. He didn't gloat, just bought me a beer and told me I looked less like a man walking on glass. And then one afternoon, I texted Mira. It was casual. No agenda. Just, "Hey, thanks for being honest. Want to grab coffee sometime?" She replied with one word, "Absolutely." And you know what? That coffee led to a walk. That walk led to a conversation. That conversation led to something I never expected, a version of connection that felt like breathing, not proving. No rush. No rebound. Just two people who had watched the same wreck from opposite sides and decided not to carry the wreckage forward. I don't know where the road leads from here, but for once, I'm not scared of it. Because when I vanished for 3 days, I thought I lost everything. But really, it was the beginning of getting myself back.